I heard that. I heard David Cohen trying to convince lawmakers that, in fact, this would be ultimately good for consumers. I don't know. It seems like if you team up the two biggest cable companies in this country, it's not going to be good for consumers. It's going to give them more pricing power, the consumer less. What do you say, Paul Sweeney?
Well, from the cable industry perspective, it's all about, investing in your product, and the product is programming and the product is technological innovation, whether it's high-def TV or whatever. And, a lot of that costs capital. So I think what Comcast is simply saying is the bigger we are, the more leverage we're going to have over our programmers. So presumably, the only reason cable prices go up from the cable industry perspective is because the programming costs go up. So if the cable industry has more leverage over programming, perhaps that would be
okay, but why do we need more programming? I mean, right now, on average, Jeff McCracken, you get 189 channels that Americans can watch. Guess how many they watch? 17. 17 out of the 189. We're charged on average $85 for these channels, an additional $43 for broadband, for a grand total of $128. How do you think this is going to affect the consumer? This idea that maybe the programming will be better, if we're not even watching it to begin with, why does it matter?
Right. No, I think Paul hit on the impact. The impact is from the, I don't know, you call it the programming aspect and sports and the cost that eventually funnels down to you. But let's be honest, the shares of these companies go up when a deal like this gets announced, and it's not because people think, or not because shareholders think, hey, this is a win for the consumer. It's inevitably because they figure out there's a way they're going to take synergies out and they're going to keep the prices the same for the consumer, or perhaps go up for the consumer.
So do people think that this is going to get done? I mean, what are your sources telling you? Yes?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And
yes.
The interesting...
And it's not a monopoly?
No, because they don't compete with each other, which is probably more the fundamental problem, that each cable company has a monopoly in each given city or region, whether you're in Des Moines or New York or Detroit or what have you. They're not competing with each other.
Well, Cory, I just know that, it's hard enough right now to get the cable company on the phone. I'm not looking forward necessarily to it getting even bigger. But let's talk about the anti-competitive issue that Netflix raised. What's Netflix's big concern here?
So I think it's interesting to think about. First of all, the notion that Comcast will innovate if it has, a bigger share of the market in the world. You either believe innovation happens from one place, like the federal government, or you believe innovation happens from lots of different competitors getting access to the market at the same time in the same way. When Silicon Valley looks at Comcast, they don't see a provider of cable television and an ability to switch from CBS to ABC to PBS or whatever. What they see is the dominant provider of Internet access and high-speed Internet access to the nation. Indeed, Comcast and Time Warner Cable put together will control more than a third of all high-speed Internet access. So if you're a company that wants to sell something online, you probably oppose this deal. I'm not speculating here. Let's talk about some of the companies that have come out against this deal in the last day. Facebook, Google, Yahoo, LinkedIn. Why would LinkedIn oppose a deal like this? Because they want to have the same unfettered access to consumers as their competitors do. Let's imagine a world where Comcast and Time Warner are together and they can choose whether it's going to be a Lyft or Uber who can have the fastest internet connection to the home. Well, then they might want to have an investment with one of those companies. So Lyft is opposed to this deal. You have a lot of the innovators in Silicon Valley looking at this deal saying, wait a minute, we can't have a company decide who's going to receive our goods and services faster than others. Even Netflix,
I mean, look,
which has
these
a
are
favorite deal with Comcast, is against this deal.
Valid points. I mean, are they falling on deaf ears? Is Congress just not hearing this? Regulators, are they going to hear this? Cory?
What sound does Congress hear the most? Ka-ching. They hear ka-ching. Comcast has spent over $18 million in the last year in lobbying in D.C. That's more than any other company in the world except for defense contractor Northrop Grumman. So Comcast and add to that, the NCTIA, the industry lobbying group, they've spent $19 million in the last year. So you've got tens of millions of dollars going to Congress and going to the powers that be in Washington, fighting from Comcast and from the NCTIA. We did a piece on Bloomberg West earlier today. It's going to run later on the network. I urge people to check it out online. It explains just where all this money is coming from and where it's going.
Jeff wants to get in here.
Cory, what's really interesting to me is how Comcast and the possibility of a Comcast merger is opening up or creating the animal spirits for other people now to look at transactions. Obviously, we've reported on AT&T talking to DirecTV. Charlie Ergen today was out talking about whether that deal makes sense. And we obviously have Masa-san thinking Sprint and SoftBank should be coming together with T-Mobile. Another situation that Charlie Ergen commented on and said, if they don't get that one done, I might be interested in T-Mobile myself.
This gets back to, you and I have talked a lot about this, just all this M&A activity suddenly happening at once. And one of the, it's not just in the healthcare sector and big pharma, not just in tech, but also in media right now.
Right. Well, the Comcast deal, it's almost like it creates this whir of activity that they want to draft in behind, especially if regulators are going to sign off on Comcast. Comcast, then Masasan or DirecTV or AT&T says, hey, if you let that deal go through, Mr. Regulator, you probably need to let my deal go through.
Yeah, and as Cory mentioned, this is really all about broadband, and what the regulators are really looking at here is about broadband access. And the reason that's become, center stage here as opposed to the traditional video business is because everything we've been talking about over the last 10 to 15 years about the convergence between technology and media, it's actually happening, and here's a great example of it.